Yeah, they can see me. Hey, it's always my back to somebody. Good morning for those of you who woke up. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody on Hangout. Hi, guys. So we haven't had this in a while, and I am thinking about what we need to do to actually get a little bit more information and visibility out there to everybody as we go through a lot of changes that you may have noticed, and we're having a couple of more announcements coming out later today, or one announcement coming out later today. I think it's really important for us to get closer in touch, and we're going to be thinking about how we need to change this going forward, and make them a little bit more probably formal, so that we can get information out. But I think it's really really important to have those bi-directional conversations. So, as you know, some of you may have seen that I've started having those Tell Lila conversations, and I find them extremely helpful. If any of you guys have been in those, you've experienced them. I don't know. I hope they're as useful for you as they are for me. But I wanted to give you today a little bit more insight. One, I wanted to let you ask questions about the changes that are being made. If you have questions about people we're bringing on board or changes that we're making. Another piece is so talk about that, and another part is for you to actually ask me questions opposed to me asking you questions. But before I start, I wanted to let you know how, just in terms of how we come up and make the decisions at the end of the day. So conversations like this, conversations like I'm having and Tell Lila, one-on-one conversations that I've had with most of you at this point are really important, because from my experience in the past, and I still believe this very deeply, that the best decisions actually come from you. Most of the time, employees and users know what needs to be done. They know what's missing. They know where things are getting blocked, and they have very clear visibility into that. And what happens in organizations and companies, that visibility is often lost, and that's why I'm doing so many different things trying to get to short circuit my connection to each individual employee. Because I need to hear it. And the way I make a decision is I hear it many times from many people, right? It can't be the same person telling me the same thing over and over. That's not going to work. Don't try it. But if I hear things enough from many people, the picture becomes much more clear. So, and when we conceptualize how we need to structure things, or who we need to bring on board, or how we need to shift things around, those ideas actually come from you. It's not me, waking up one day and saying, "Oh, I know, here's the light, and I'm going to make it so." It's not at all like that. It all comes at the end of the day. The decisions are driven by the information I'm gathering from each and every one of you, from community members that I talk to, and somewhat by people outside of the organization who have a lot of experience as well, and can bring perspective. Okay, so that's I wanted to give you that as a backdrop, and then now I want to open it for questions, any kind of questions that you may have about kind of, Lila, what's going on? We're making a lot of changes. So anybody? Set up so it's easier for me to see everyone on both sides. Hi.
Hi. I have a question about the call to action. That was a big item at the All Staff. And at the All Staff, there were 3 items that were announced. And a few weeks later, the full list was posted on the Office Wiki. But as far as I know, it was never announced or discussed. So do you expect to announce the remaining items? Or do we just happen to discover them on the wiki?
No, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. There's actually an email sitting there with a little bit more information on this. So before I answer your question, let me give you guys a little bit more insight of how my time is structured a little bit, so that you can see, you can understand how things are organized. So when a CEO's job is tricky, because on one hand you have this kind of operational arm and you have to run the organization day to day. On the other hand, you have to keep your mind always about 5 to 10 years out. Constantly have to look at the horizon, and then there's everything in between. So there is this really strange thing that happens. So when we started the year, the call to action, you will notice the call to action is very tactical. It's very much focused on this year, and that was purposefully so. There are 12 items on it. We only kicked off 3, and the 3 that you know about, and it's not it's not written in stone, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of try to get enough momentum on 3 every quarter, right? So 3 times 4, you have 12. So this is the reason why we didn't push it at all at once. When we met with managers, they basically told us, look, guys, you have 12 items. You're just going to get everybody confused. So we only pushed 3. So the change that we've made with respect to the COO role, the COO role is that component of the job that really has to do with making the organization efficient. And Terry is stepping into that role, and call to action is going to be his primary mandate. So in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see more information coming out, and specifically held it for him to own it, as opposed to try to get as much of it out there and inform people before he really steps into the role. So the information is forthcoming. We have been working on the top 3 of the calls to action. Some of you may have seen more of it, and some of you may have seen less. So an example of what we have been doing, for example, is putting in place an operational scorecard for the entire organization. We have been working on our processes and trying to understand how do we need to optimize how the groups work. So when you come in to do your quarterly report, that format is going to start to look different. This is part of the call to action component. Another thing that we're doing is looking at how we forecast and budget. I'll give you an example. When we think about rollout of visual editor, huge thing for us, right? The team is doing incredible work. We think we're not thinking far enough, right? So this on time, on budget thing is really about better planning and better forecasting, right? So right now we're thinking, okay, great, visual editor, we're going to push it out. It's great. I have not heard anybody bring up to me that we need more servers, maybe, right? What impact is it going to have on operations? What impact is it going to have on other teams when, let's say, it's projected that twice as many saves are going to happen, let's say, on the page? So things like that need to become part of our of the way we work. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. But what we're trying to do is the call to action is all about putting the foundation into place so that we don't what you call trip over ourselves. So the first 3 are under attack, so to say, under action now. Terry will be communicating with the organization about the rest of them and how we're going to approach them going forward. They won't all belong to him, but it's under his domain to make sure that everybody is informed and driving that forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else? You guys are so quiet today. Anybody online?
I'd like the opportunity to talk one-on-one with you at some time. Do we have a mechanism for doing that with remote people?
Yes, we have mechanisms for everybody, and that mechanism is called Lisa, and she's sitting right there. So all you have to do, if anybody wants time, you can just reach out to Lisa, and she will schedule it.
Lisa, we cannot hear you.
Lisa says that she has a draft email specifically for you. Because she's in the process of scheduling. Can we discuss camera? So I don't know how many of you guys were on the fifth floor. Hopefully that worked well. That space is going to be our new space for these. And hopefully the camera is better there. We've asked for multi-location cameras. No questions today, huh?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question is about the VP of Discovery and Search, and more about the process around hiring people. So I didn't know about this position, and it's okay, but I think traditionally the organization is used to kind of having job announcements out there and kind of recruiting in a very open way. And I like to uh, kind of hear from you more about how that decision was made and kind of what is the plan moving forward. Are we expecting to have more hirings that are kind of not very open? And if so, like what are the under what circumstances we make such decisions?
Okay, yeah. So a couple of notes here. So I don't think it's as much about open as opposed to having a posted positions versus not. And similarly, this is not the only role, obviously, that that this happens on. So I'll give you a little bit of my philosophy. So I think, first of all, an organization of our size, not everybody always going to know who is getting hired and when and be part of the interview loop. It's just part of that is just a matter of scale. Right? We're over 200 people now. Not everybody is going to have that visibility. So that's just part of growing up. Another piece is my personal philosophy is you hire people you hire good people when you can get them, and really good people are really hard to get when they become available or when they're open to moves. You just put them through an interview loop as quickly as you can, and if everybody's on board, you pull the trigger. You figure out later where exactly they're going to fit at the end of the day. I actually believe that people need to move around a lot. They need to learn different things. They need to change roles. Right now, we brought in a person to look at the search component because that's where that's where a lot of experimentation needs to happen right now. We're trying to investigate that particular piece. So I think we're going to have both to some extent. When somebody that we know of who has a good track record comes on the market, we're going to snatch them. That's because we need good people and we need them fast. Right. On the other hand, we also will have positions that are available, and we can't find people that are open and posted, and we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes coming in, and may not have on we may not have somebody we know for it. This is, I think, I've seen people go either way, right? I think the expectation here is that there's always a position open, no matter what role it is, and then we always have to do an interview and recruiting loop. I want us to get a little bit more rapid with this. Like, if one of you guys knows somebody, and I'm starting to see this, people just sending emails basically saying, I know this person, they're great, let's get them through the interview as quickly as we possibly can, and figure out the role later. And that's going to happen. And I think especially in the technology group, it's critical for us to do that because the market is so incredibly competitive. So I can see both of those happening in the future. We can't operate like a university does. No matter what, we always go through a 12-step program to get to higher. It's just not competitive. We need to be able to move fast. Any more comments on that? Something else? Yeah, I know, Lila. I had the same in Berkeley. Nope. Even when you have a really, really great person, you can't get them on the payroll.
Same feedback, slightly different. The director of engineering position wasn't really discussed, or I missed it if it was discussed internally. I potentially know some people who would be good candidates, and I actually just turned on a watch this page alert for our jobs page. But it'd be better if we had some good internal communication about here's a new open position. If you know somebody who's a great DBA, the ops team needs that, things like that, because we don't tend to talk about that generally.
That's a really great feedback, and I think that's really important. I don't know if Terry is here hearing that. That's actually critical. We just need to get the word out. In my last company, you can still see everybody from the CEO all the way down to individual contributors all tweeting about all the open recs or skill sets that are needed. So this is definitely something that we need to fix. On the other hand, especially in technology, if you know of anybody who is kind of ready to move, just let Damon know, right? This is any good technical person we will always want to look at, no matter what. It's just the way things are. Good coders, good DBAs, good architects. We always need people like that. So even if we don't have open position, if there's a rock star, we may create one. Right. So yeah, I completely understand, and thanks for the comment. And we're going to be we're hiring, and we're projecting to hire much more in the tech group. There's some more comments on.
Hi. Well, I just wanted to comment that we are talking about two types of positions. One is that there's an open position and we hire someone, but another thing is when the position is announced at the same time that the person is announced, like with Terry, for instance. So I guess in those cases, it's simply a different speed altogether. You are announcing. That's right. I'm not criticizing. I'm just stressing that we are talking about two very different types of processes here.
That's true. That's very true. And thank you for highlighting that. So let's. This is where this is ultimately goes to the root of the question that Lila asked, and that's what happens. Can we hire somebody when we know? So it's the chance of somebody that one of you guys refers, somebody who you worked with before, is a known quality, known quantity, right? The chance of that person being successful here and the chance of that person being impactful is exponentially higher than somebody that we hire through and never knew before. And this is why community members also work really well, because we know what they're already done, right? We know what they're capable of. So we need to be. What I'm saying here is that we're going to open the gate on being flexible. If we know somebody who is really good, we're going to try to figure out how to get them into the organization. If we'll believe, we still have to go through the vetting process. Obviously, it's not like me or Arthur can come in and say, or Lisa can come in and say this person is amazing. It's not enough. It still needs to go through the interview loop and get vetted. But when we see high caliber people who we know from previous experience as high performers, we're gonna try to make space for them. And this is more like what you see in startups, as opposed to, of course, the educational institutions and things like that. That's the big shift.
So I guess on the other side of like organization changing and needing new people and new skills is actual internal professional development and growth. And I guess I'm wondering what your commitment is to that. I've seen like there's like the WikiLeads program, like leadership and soft skills development, but then there's also technical skills. We have the health and wellness right now, which is great, but it doesn't tell you that they also take out taxes from that, so it's not exactly 150 bucks, so it's not that much really. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for prompting that question. That's really important. It's important to have a balance, because if we just get flooded with a bunch, even if those people are great, from a bunch of people outside, we're going to lose momentum, in fact. right? We're going to lose who we are. We're going to, it's you have to constantly keep balance. It's really important for us, and I really believe in promoting and supporting people within organizations. So just from my previous experience at Sugar, I had people who went all the way from individual contributor to a CTO, right? Or a VP. It takes years. It's not something, that person took 7 or 8 years. That transition was very, very gradual, because at every stage you have to coach and mentor and support. So I've been actually looking at our mentorship and support programs, and we're going to make some changes to that. I think WikiLead is one aspect of it. It's not everything. I think one-on-one mentorship is critical for individuals. I also see people who are incredibly capable. So, one of the reasons that we promoted Luz as opposed to getting somebody from the outside is because we saw somebody with a lot of potential and promise, and we believed that we needed to it would be better for us to promote from within and support and help him grow. There are a few people within our product engineering team like that, high capacity, really step up and just drive things. And not just drive things individually, drive things through teams, with teams, get people on board, get people inspired. Those are the people that we need to focus on and grow and support. So it's a two-side conversation. Yes, there is just fundamental programs of we're looking at improved communication program. We're looking at skills skill programs, and we're looking to continue WikiLead. But there's another side of it, is that identifying and seeing when people are really stepping up and giving them the opportunity, opening the opportunity for them, and giving them that extra support. And that's the best way to do that, is really to align, to have a mentor work with you, right? And this right now is very ad hoc. We don't have a formalized program for that. I would like to see this turned around into something more proactive. I personally coached and mentored people on my staff, and you can't do more than one. So it's not going to be like everybody gets a mentor here. It's only very few people do. But when that does work, it's an incredible gift. Actually, it's great on both sides. Great for mentee and for the mentor. I'm very much thinking about this. We're actually there's a lot of work that's going on right now with Anna and Jody. A lot of thinking around how our processes need to change, how our review process needs to change, all of that, in order to support us with our cultural values in mind as well.
I would love to see some of these training opportunities.
Anything else?
I would love to see some of these training opportunities made available to remote people online. Is that possible?
There seems to be a lot of initiative towards increasing efficiency, increasing velocity, and things like that. And I wonder if there are also initiatives to create space for more experimentation at the same time, and not just product experimentation, but maybe process experimentation as well.
So I think it's a great question. I'd love to hear your thoughts back, by the way. The one thing that I'm hearing from people when I meet with you guys is that one of the challenges that we have is having autonomy to make decisions and to try things and sometimes fail. So I think in order for us to be effective at experimentation, we also have to have that we basically need to give people freedom to try. And right now, what I'm seeing is people wait for permission. So one of the things that we are actively thinking about is how to structure our teams to give people this freedom, to give people freedom to, as a team, to make a decision, and decision that could be risky, to take a risk, right? Today, that's not an easy thing to do because people don't feel like they have accountability, the freedom, the authority to decide. and to communicate what the risks and failures might be. So we're actively thinking about this. We're thinking about it right now. Specifically, you asked about not in the context of product team, but we are thinking about it in the context of product team in this particular case. But we're also thinking about it in the context of HR, as I was just saying earlier. We're thinking about it in terms of our programs with respect to community teams. So it's that kind of model of thinking, ability for teams to take risks, ability for teams to try new things, I think needs to belong within the team itself. It should not be at my level. Another thing that I really want to see within the organization is people coming up with ideas and pitching them, right? And really trying to push that envelope. And this is why in the management meeting last time, Terry was actually talking about what is the business, Eric, what was it called? It's not a business plan. Business case looks like, right? So if I have this brilliant idea, and I think that it's just going to help us, help to push our vision that much further. Any single one of you should be able to write it up, think through some cons and pros and some basic fundamentals, and come to your executive and pitch it and say, I absolutely think we should allocate budget for it, right? And I absolutely think we should put resources on it and we should try it. So we're going to give that ability to every single one of you to do this, to pitch an idea, so that you can incubate it in your head for a little while, think about it, and if you think that it's going to have a lot of impact, you're going to have an opportunity to go and speak up.
Will you reserve budget for those kinds of things potentially happening, and a certain amount of them potentially?
So it's going to be different in different teams, I think. So within the community team, we're thinking about allocating specific budgets to seeds, basically seed projects. Within engineering team, it's actually going to belong to the team itself, right? So the way we're thinking about engineering is giving the team autonomy. So if you're running your own team, it's going to be on you actually to decide how much of your budget to allocate toward experimentation versus towards something that is actively like under work. And you should have the flexibility to change that formula as well. So we're going to put a lot of trust into our leaders, into our team leaders, and we're going to give you the opportunity to figure out what that equation looks like. And our job is really to guide you and to help back you up. So if you come to me for 3 quarters in a row, you probably won't come to me. But you come to your boss three times and 3 quarters in a row, and you have no allocation for research, effectively, right? For thinking through new ideas. It's your boss's job to tell you, hey, you may want to think about this, right? It's always a conversation. So who wanted to ask online? There was a question? They can't talk? What? We're discriminating.
We're discriminating.
Maggie had a question. I don't know. Can you guys hear us?
Oh, Megan.
Megan.
Yes.
Can we unmute Megan?
Can we unmute Megan?
And Megan, you may want. No, she's talking. You just can't hear her.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Megan, try to log into. Okay. If anyone would like to, where's the actual question? Okay, I'm gonna read Maggie's question. I'm wondering we might be able to focus on finding ongoing learning opportunities online, so that these will also benefit remote people. I found a few things through online institution, but would love to know more. Yeah, and I'm actually gonna throw it back to you guys a little bit, right? The definition of a professional is somebody who is always learning, and that's not just on us. Don't sit there and wait for your manager to say, hey, you have to go to this course or you have to go to this conference. You should be looking for opportunities to learn. You should be learning. You should be looking for what is where do you need to be, and what do you want to what do you want to learn about. Okay, and then you should be bringing it. We have budgets for this, right? So bring it up to your manager. Say, I want to go to this conference. This is why. Or I want to take this course. This is why. No, it's not just it's you know it's not a school. So you are educated professionals yourself. Do we have enough? Another one?
Hello, can you hear us?
Megan, you can also type it if you want.
Megan, we can hear you, right? It's just the office.
She's the hang up
Oh, they clearly work. Maybe we need to log in. Maybe we're the ones who are. They're all hearing each other. Yes, Aaron says we need to. It's you guys. Anybody here?
Test, mic test. 1, 2, mic test. Testing the mic, making noises. So maybe you can hear me. Test, mic test. Test 1, 2, mic noises.
They can't hear you.
No, they got nothing.
We have to go to San Francisco.
I think they're muted now too, which is the cherry on top.
Okay, let's have our own breakfast here.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just unmute everybody.
Breakfast with the
conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, other remoties, how are you?
It's so exciting.
Okay, Megan's question. I was wondering about an update on the annual plan process. It seems like it's still in the planning process on the team level. Wondering what happens next to share progress wider across an org on the big ideas for next year. Related to the call to action, what projects are we going to stop? Great question. Megan, you should start singing there so that they can monitor if you come online. Okay, so Megan, good question. A couple of things. So this is actually responsibility of your executive to talk to you, but let me give you a high-level insight into how the annual plan is changing. So the annual plan is going to become much simpler. Again, this goes hand in hand with this idea that you really should have autonomy to establish your own objectives at your own level. But at the very high level, each team will only have 3 big things that they are planning to do. You know, a thing like, you know, rolling out Visual Editor on English Wikipedia as well could be an example of that, right? Or making Visual Editor available for mobile, you know, could be something along those lines. But we're actually even not even looking at it from that perspective. We're looking at it even more from just metrics perspective. We could say, oh, we want to have 80% of our grantees deliver content, or something like that. And I'm just totally making this up. So what your executives are doing right now is they're trying to figure out what are the areas where they want to commit to impact. And I've asked only for 3. I call them New Year's resolutions. So each one of your executives should have 3 New Year's resolutions, and they should be talking to, maybe not to each individual person, but at least to your, definitely at your management level about those things, right? And we're getting closer to where we are. They're starting to gel. At which point Garfield and Terry will put the draft version of that together for you guys to comment and take a look at. I'm hoping that's, I don't know what the timeline is. You can ask Garfield in the back.
Mic test. Hey, it worked.
So what's happening right now is that we are constructing the first ballpark numbers. So all the departments have been asked to basically put their asks in a standard narrative template. You may have been part of that process, or you may have not been. This is to get like a high-level view of, okay, like engineering wants to hire 1 billion people. Can we hire 1 billion people? Maybe it's 1 million people. Like, you start having these conversations around like what's actually possible, like what do people suggest we do, what do they invest, like you have these 3 priorities, New Year's resolution. people are suggesting, and then you say, we will take over the world and we'll take all these things and it will cost $1 billion. And then fundraising will say, we will not give you $1 billion. Right? And so you have these conversations and it's an iterative process. So the first iteration is something that we intend to talk about in the next week. Garfield is building like the ballpark figures based on what's everyone's starting to collect. Then we have the second draft that's due by the end of April. And then the third version that's due by the end of May. Then it's going up to the board. They have their votes on it. But what Terry is pushing for, and you're pushing for, Lila, I think very correctly so, is to move away from the model we had in the past, which is where we do this one-off sort of big front-loaded planning process with 70 pages of paperwork, and then 3 months into the new year, all the decisions are already obsolete. So that's sort of the old school annual planning, heavy front-loaded one-year plan. Instead, you want to shift towards like quarterly forecasting, adjustments, continually learning how you're actually changing your priorities based on what is happening in the real world. And so although we are doing this model still in sort of a hybrid way of like, okay, there are some instruments here of like the way we've done it in the past, we are shifting towards more flexibility going forward, and we'll work out at the exact level what is feasible. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's mid-year adjustments, but there's definitely a desire for us to have flexibility throughout the year to adjust as we learn.
Thanks, Eric. And with respect to the projects getting demoted potentially or cut, this is actually going to happen at your. It's again an iterative process, but it's with all of you involved. So you'll see as some projects take priority, other projects get deprioritized or wrapped into something else. And this is going to happen. You actually see a lot of it on the micro level. We're already seeing, but of course, you're going to see more of that as we move forward. And it happens at the individual team level. At the larger scope, what we're looking at, because we're trying to, at the end of the day, it's really important for us to remember we're here for knowledge. We're here to bring knowledge to every human by every human. Right? It's not about an individual project that we run. It's not about English Wikipedia or Wiktionary or whatever. Right? Our goal here is to figure out which projects at that scale need to get integrated and how they need to get integrated. This is why we're actually experimenting with search, because it's one way for us to put a pane on top of all of our projects and start thinking about them, which ones make sense within our context. And we're going to be looking at what needs to be integrated, how they need to be integrated, and which ones need to be basically, they're their own thing, and we don't need to think about them. So we're basically building an algorithm, prioritization algorithm around our sites from that perspective. Anything else?
So the engineering world is pretty big, right? So to give that as an example, we have like 130-ish people in engineering and product, more than a dozen teams working on different things. And historically, the way we've planned out our goals is every team just put them on a wiki page, and there hasn't been a lot of internal prioritization and selection between them. To the extent that we shut things down, it was very like, oh, this thing isn't working, let's stop it. So what we really want to establish is a continued cart sort cadence around like, okay, let's put all of this in a system. What's our P0, P1, P2, P3 priority? And are these aligned? Our P0 priority should be on EN Wiki. Why is this not related to the P1 priority in this team over here? Like you really want to make sure that you start seeing the through lines more consistently, so that when you start getting into these trouble spots where you say, we're shipping this really complicated product and we really need support from these people over here, and the people over there say, actually, we have our own top priority and it's this, like then you start having problems. That's why you have these more systematic conversations around what are our priorities, and those are where things get ultimately demoted, because you start saying, oh, actually, we can't afford to do this now because we have to support our P0 this quarter, and our P0 is this, and therefore we're going to focus on that. So that rigor is something that takes time to develop. In engineering right now, every team has been asked to pick one top objective for the next quarter, which is forcing them to have trade-off conversations that they didn't used to need to have. And it's, I think, very healthy to have these kinds of conversations, but it's not a robust, rigorous prioritization model yet. We think by the next quarter, we'll iterate it one more step further to have that sort of grid with priorities for each team that I talked about.
Anything else? More questions? And by the way, it's not about if the project gets deprioritized or gets put on hold or gets even killed. It's not. It doesn't mean that it's a risk for you, right? It means it's an opportunity for you to step into something where you can have more impact. I don't want you guys to think that just because we decided that one thing is, we decided to deprioritize something, then it reflects, it means that you don't have something to do, or I want you to think about this process of trying and changing that decision and understanding the impact as part of a healthy life cycle. And it's your job to actually dig in and poke holes into and or defend something that you believe is right. Right? It's not. You have to be nice about it, but you also have to have the right scrupulousness around those topic areas. You have to really investigate. It's like it's a little bit of a Wikipedia culture around that, right? You have to ask hard questions, and when you're satisfied, that's how you know you're doing the right thing, and make sure that you're satisfied. And if you're not satisfied, let's say, okay, this is not what we need to do, right? And it's also your job to step up and say, look, if I took my day to day and I spend my time over here, we will have more impact. And it's on every single one of us to think that way. And that's a change in how we operate. It's a change in how we think. And I know it's not easy, and it's going to take time for us to get through it. Okay. Any more questions? So I typically ask them. So what I do is I ask questions in the smaller settings, just because they're a little bit more. It's easier with 10 people around the table than with a big audience. So this group meetings are more focused on me expressing how we're thinking at the executive level, rather than asking questions back. The smaller meetings are about, and they're more intimate and safe. I want to create safe spaces where I will never track those comments back to you. I will never use them against you, even if you tell me that I'm doing something that's stupid or whatever. It's okay. I want to have that safe space for you guys to express yourself. What I ask of you typically is, where do you need to be unblocked? How can I help you to step in and have more impact and be a better leader yourself? How can I be a better leader for you? What is it that you need from me? And if you want to comment on that whenever, you can stop me in the office and tell me that. You can tell me now. You can tell me whenever. Right? I'm always here. My job is just like, it's really interesting. Job of every manager is to be the best support system and the best person to push their team, every single individual on their team, to be the best that they can be, right? So my team is to push you, and I will push you hard. If you're not feeling pushed, then I'm not doing my job, right? I'm going to set the bar over here, and you know what? You guys are going to hit there, right? That's what a great teams and great managers do, and that's where we're going to be, and that's what we're even starting to see. Like when you look at the teams that's working on VE right now, they set the bar and they're crossing the line, right? They're crossing the trend line. They're now those of you who know how the software is managed, they're now faster than what we predicted. We wanted them to be. So they're moving at a pace. Faster pace than we set for them. That's a great place to be, right? And that's what we're all going to get to.
So, Lila, I have a question. So by the comment a moment ago, pushing people. It's just been my experience working at the Wikimedia Foundation that people here are driven incredibly strongly. that the last thing that we would want to do is push them to work more hours because they might get sick, or take it more serious. So I'm wondering where this notion comes from of pushing. Why is it that you feel like people need to push?
Okay. Let me clarify what I'm trying to say. So what Mark is asking, sorry, what Aaron is asking is, why do you say pushing when people are working really late hours? Pushing doesn't necessarily mean work harder, and I don't want you to work hard unless you're working smart and you are getting results, right? And you're making a difference in the world at the end of the day. What I'm going to push you to do is not necessarily to put an extra hour in. That's at the end of the day, I don't care whether you do where you make that impact in 20 minutes or in 20 hours, right? What I'm going to push you to do, what I'm going to do by push, I mean a challenge. I'm going to constantly challenge you to challenge yourself ultimately and to make a bigger difference. That's what I'm trying to say. To make it, and from your perspective, and I challenge myself constantly. How can I break the record? And how can I make it faster? How can I do it simpler? And what are different creative ways I can imagine and implement as I do this? That's what I mean by pushing.
So, and I think this is always a conversation, right? So, as an example, we talked about the targets with the content creation team when they were setting their targets for this quarter, and so we had a team meeting with them, and we said, okay, what are you looking to accomplish? And we felt that their targets were pretty conservative, and then we went through the numbers with them and said, okay, what do you think, like if you do this and this and this, like what can you accomplish? And they felt like, well, if we don't hit these numbers, then we'll be very sad. And so you have this kind of conversation, the give and take, where you say, you know, but you want to stretch yourself, you want to aim high, you want to focus your team so that everything you do is aligned towards that high bar that you set. So I don't think when we say push, we mean like do it now, do it now, do it now. Like this is not about like being a terrible boss to you and like standing on top of you and cracking the whip. This is about like having conversations about where we want to go, how we set the bar high, and how we get there.
Thanks, Eric. That's really helpful. I completely agree with what Eric just said, and I think at the end of the day, the best managers that I've had challenged my own thinking. And when I told them, I'll tell you, there's nothing that I believe we can't do, right? And I always had the teams that I believed there's nothing that the team could not have done. It's just a matter of how quickly and how much it's going to cost us, right? And I think the freedom to think that you can do anything is incredible, and I want you guys to think that way. I don't want you guys to constrain yourself, but by constrain yourself basically. And I will always challenge that. When you come back to me and say this can't be done for some reason, or you know it's really hard, or it's really complicated, I'm going to push you on. I'm going to challenge you on how to make it simpler, how to make it easier, how to make it friendlier. That's at the end of the day what this is really about, and how to make it so that you're having the most fun as you're doing it. So yeah, it's higher expectations, but it's also, I think at the end of the day you're going to be it's more fun for people. I have, you know, I want to have expectations that are right here of everyone and of myself. Otherwise, what's the point? There was another question, Mark.
Yeah, there's a comment that I want to repeat from Liquidity and IRC, and I've turned off my headphones so that I don't hear the echo in the room right now. Is please do more drafting in staff visible locations like OfficeWiki, so that interested people can watch, list, and contribute to it if they want to. It's frustrating to get final drafts as the first news of things. It can sometimes feel like anything that we say is unlikely to actually change what's happening. Like there's already been a decision made, and we're just hearing about it.
So I could only hear part of what you said. It would be great if you can type it because it's choppy. It sounds like what the gist of what I've got is that you want more visibility in the decision-making process.
Yeah, especially early on.
Yep. Yeah, trust me, we're trying really hard, and we're trying to find best ways to do it. You know, like with the strategy process. On one hand, you know, everybody's complaining it's so slow. We don't know where we're going. And yeah, I could come out tomorrow and tell you where we're going. But on the same by the same talking, I'm constantly iterating and having different channels into the conversation. So it's tricky. On some things, it's and you have to figure out the threshold at which, you know, who makes the decision and how much feedback loop there is, because obviously the feedback loop can really slow you down. So I'm actually on exactly the same page with you. I really want to make sure that we don't just make decisions in a vacuum, and that's why we're having all of these kind of conversations. But at the same time, it won't always be. We won't always get it right, in other words. So I don't want you to have the expectation that we will. And let me read what you just said. Boils down to release early, release often, but applied to our internal decision-making processes. Yeah, I hear you. There's a balance between confusing people with too early of a release, and so basically having the work baked enough so that people are not freaked out and confused and, you know, like, Lila, what the hell does this mean? Versus coming out with a product that's too finished. It's really tricky. You know, I've been in open source culture for so long now. It's a delicate balance, and it's especially harder as the organization grows. And we are on that cusp of our organization is just crossed that threshold of 200 people. That's where it gets super hard, right? And I'm really sensitive about making sure that we don't lose that sense of ownership. Every single one of you, every single one of you has it. So if you have specifics of, like, Lila, if this changed, I think, you know, we'll be better, we'll participate better. Bring it up. Bring it up to me, bring it up to Terry, bring it up to Eric, bring it up to your direct manager. I'm really open to changing how we act in this respect and to our process. But at the same time, there are challenges with operating like we would have if we were 50 people. With 50 people, it's so much easier to have that process work, because you can just bring everybody in the same room and constantly, like every week, you talk about what's going on. At 200, so much more is going on, and you have more people to both inform and get feedback from. Eric, do you have?
Yeah, as Lila said, it's a balance. Like I have my own experience as a leader in this organization, trying to strike that balance. If you recall, back in, say, August, September, we were having a lot of conversations in engineering and product about the org structure and how do we want to organize our work. Put a lot of this stuff on OfficeWiki, and we got people's comments and input, but it also caused a lot of freak out and confusion. And it's like, oh, is this happening tomorrow or next Tuesday? Like, who's going to be affected? Will it be moved around, etc.? So the moment you start having certain conversations, especially if there's not a clear timeline attached to it and frequent iteration in a very consistent manner, there is a pretty significant risk that you can actually make things worse by communicating in a way that is confusing to people. In this particular case, we had new VP engineering coming in 2 months later, and he needs to figure out, like, how does he want to organize the group? Who does he want to bring in? What kind of structure makes sense to him? So, of course, the conversations 6 weeks before that were very public and very iterative suddenly are no longer quite at the same place where they were. And that's what happens when you do the early release often thing, and it can happen, and that's not necessarily the best possible outcome. So depending on the kinds of changes you make, you need to design and structure a process that makes sense for them. So I think we need to strike that balance pretty carefully about, okay, we have a change that we want to make here. What is the first time we communicate about it? What is the second time we want to communicate about it? And it's a calibration between the extremes of we will only do it when it's fully baked finally in 6 months versus we'll say something every week and you might have no idea what we're talking about. Like there's a middle ground between those two.
Sort of for all the participants that are here, since we're looking at the format of these meetings and we have individual one-on-ones and we have more intimate groups, and then of course this breakfast, I'd like to get a consensus of how people feel about the timing, the day of the week. Like, would it be easier if we had these meetings in the middle of the week, at lunchtime? Like, it would be helpful to know, because ideally we want a forum for Lila to give you updates, but also it's important for her to get your feedback. And the greater participation we have, the more successful that'll be. So it would really help for us to know, in terms of strategizing and planning these meetings going forward, if there are certain dates or days of the week or times of the day that we should look at, that we should try to avoid. We've been having these meetings in the morning to accommodate overseas participants, but that doesn't always work so well for local participants. So we're trying to have.
So I think we're coming up on what I recommend, Lila is saying, just send a survey for people for all of the WMF, and let's just figure out what people want offline. Thank you for doing this. Okay, so I'm going to thank everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and please let Lisa know what works and what doesn't. And for those of you online as well, as everybody here, have a happy weekend coming up. Okay, bye bye. Thank you.